The doors slammed shut one by one, heavy oak reinforced with iron, each lock clicking into place like a death sentence. Clara stood in the center of the great hall, her single traveling bag at her feet, listening to her husband seal every exit of Blackridge Manor. "You're not leaving," Rowan's voice came from somewhere in the shadows of the upper gallery, raw and unrecognizable. This was it. The breaking point. 6 months of cold politeness, of sleeping in separate wings, of being treated like expensive furniture. And now, when she'd finally gathered the courage to walk away, the Duke had turned his own home into a prison. Clara's hands shook, but her voice didn't. "Then you'll have to keep me locked in here forever, because the moment you open those doors, I'm gone." What you're about to hear is a story about survival, courage, and two people who had to destroy everything between them before they could build something real. If you're still watching at the end, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let me take you back to where it all started, 3 seasons before those doors locked shut. The rain had been falling for 3 days straight when Clara Whitmore's father told her she was going to marry a man she'd never met. She'd been in the garden, what was left of it anyway, trying to save the last of the vegetable patch from drowning in mud. Her dress was already ruined, hem black with wet earth, her hair plastered to her face. When she looked up and saw her father standing on the back porch, she knew. The set of his shoulders, the way he couldn't quite meet her eyes. She'd seen that look before. Right before he'd sold her mother's jewelry, then the horses, then the South acreage. They were out of things to sell. Except her. "Clara," he said, and his voice cracked on her name. "Come inside. We need to talk." She stayed kneeling in the mud for a moment longer, looking at the pathetic rows of half-drowned carrots she'd been trying to save. Funny how you could know something was coming and still feel the impact like a physical blow when it arrived. Inside, her mother sat at the kitchen table with her hands folded so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Her younger brother Tom stood by the window, 13 years old and trying to look like a man. Failing. "The Duke of Blackridge has made an offer," her father said, not bothering with preamble. Maybe he thought kindness would make it harder. Maybe he was right. A very generous offer. "For what?" Clara heard herself ask, even though she already knew. "For marriage." Her mother's voice was barely a whisper. "To you." Clara pulled out a chair and sat down carefully, like she was balancing something fragile on her head. "I see. And if I refuse?" The silence that followed was answer enough. Her father cleared his throat. "We'll lose the estate, everything. By winter, we'll have nothing. No home, no income, no—" He stopped, started again. "The Duke's offer includes settlement of all our debts, a monthly allowance for your mother and Tom, and guaranteed employment for any of our remaining staff who want it." "How generous," Clara said. The bitterness in her voice surprised her. She'd thought she'd used it all up over the past 2 years, watching their world shrink and shrink until it was just these 4 walls and the growing stack of dunning letters in her father's study. "Clara," Tom's young voice cracked, "you don't have to—" "Yes, she does." Their mother's words cut through the room like winter wind. When Clara looked at her, she saw something worse than desperation. She saw resignation. Her mother had already accepted this, had probably been the one to encourage it. "We all do what we must." "What do we know about him, Clara asked. "Besides the title." Her father exchanged a look with her mother. "Not a good sign. He's established," her father began carefully. "He's been Duke for 8 years since his father passed. He manages one of the largest estates in the Northern Territories. Very successful. Very—" "Why isn't he married already?" Clara interrupted. "He must be, what, 30? Older?" 32, her mother supplied. "He was engaged once, I believe. Years ago. It didn't— The girl died. Before the wedding." Clara felt something cold settle in her stomach. "How?" "Does it matter?" Her father's voice carried a note of pleading. "Clara, this is our only option. The man is wealthy, titled, respectable. He's offering security. For all of us." "What's he getting in return?" Clara asked quietly. The question hung in the air. Nobody wanted to answer it. Finally, her mother said, "An heir eventually, and companionship, I suppose." Companionship. Such a gentle word for what they were really discussing. Clara stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the rain that wouldn't stop falling. Somewhere out there was Blackridge Manor. Somewhere out there was a man willing to buy a wife the way you'd buy livestock. When? She asked. 2 weeks, her father said. The Duke wants to finalize arrangements before the roads become impassable. Of course he did. Efficient, practical. Clara wondered if he'd approached marriage the same way he probably approached land acquisition, with a clear set of objectives and minimal emotional investment. She turned back to her family. Her father looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Her mother was crying silently, tears running down her face without sound. Tom was staring at the floor, his hands clenched into fists. I'll need new dresses, Clara heard herself say. I can't meet a duke in rags. Her mother's sob of relief was almost worse than everything that had come before. The wedding took place on a gray Thursday in early November, in a small chapel 20 miles from Blackridge Manor. The Duke had offered the use of his estate's private chapel, but Clara's father had insisted on neutral ground. One last shred of dignity, perhaps, though Clara suspected it was more about her father not wanting to see where he was sending his daughter. She wore her grandmother's wedding dress, altered to fit her smaller frame. It was beautiful in an old-fashioned way. Too much lace, too many buttons up the back that her mother's shaking hands struggled to fasten. You can still say no, her mother whispered as she worked. Even at the altar, you can refuse. Clara met her mother's eyes in the mirror. And then what? Her mother's hand stilled. Then she finished the last button without another word. The Duke was already waiting when they arrived at the chapel. Clara's first glimpse of her future husband was his back. Broad shoulders and a perfectly tailored black coat, dark hair just touching his collar. He stood utterly still, hands clasped behind him, staring at the simple altar. When he turned at the sound of their entrance, Clara's breath caught. She'd expected what? A monster? An ogre? What she got was a man who looked like he'd been carved from stone and left out in the weather, until all the softness had worn away. Hard angles, sharp jaw, eyes the color of slate. Handsome in a brutal sort of way. Expressionless. Their eyes met across the chapel. Clara waited for some reaction, surprise, pleasure, disappointment. Anything. His face didn't change. He simply gave a short nod, like she'd passed some basic inspection, then turned back to the front. The ceremony itself was mercifully brief. The minister, clearly uncomfortable, rushed through the words. Clara's father gave her away with a hand that trembled on her arm. Her mother wept quietly in the front pew. Tom didn't come. He'd refused at the last minute, and Clara was grateful. She didn't want him to see this. Do you, Clara Elizabeth Whitmore, take this man? She did. What choice did she have? Do you, Rowan Alexander Blackridge, take this woman? His I do was clipped, businesslike, the same tone he'd probably used to confirm a livestock purchase. When the minister told him to kiss his bride, Rowan hesitated for the first time. Then he stepped forward, placed one hand lightly on her shoulder, and pressed his lips to her forehead. It lasted less than a second. His lips were cold. Congratulations, the minister said weakly. And just like that, Clara Whitmore ceased to exist. She was the Duchess of Blackridge now. The reception, if you could call it that, took place in the chapel's small adjoining room. The Duke had arranged for food and wine, though Clara noticed he barely touched either. He stood slightly apart from everyone else, responding to her father's attempts at conversation with polite monosyllables. Clara's mother pulled her aside during a lull. He seems reserved. That's one word for it, Clara murmured. Give him time, darling. Men like that, they just need... Mother, Clara kept her voice gentle but firm. We both know what this is. Let's not pretend it's something it isn't. Her mother's face crumpled. Oh, Clara. They held each other for a long moment, both of them memorizing the feel of it. Clara couldn't remember the last time her mother had hugged her like this. Years, probably, before everything started falling apart. When they finally separated, Rowan was standing a few feet away, clearly waiting. Clara wondered how long he'd been there. The carriage is ready, he said. If you're finished with your farewells. Clara looked at her family, her weeping mother, her stricken father, the empty space where her brother should have been. This was it. After today, this wouldn't be her family anymore. Not really. She'd be a Blackridge, property of the estate. Yes, she said. I'm finished. Set. The journey to Blackridge Manor took 3 hours through increasingly wild country. Clara sat on one side of the carriage, Rowan on the other. He spent most of the trip looking out the window or reading correspondence he pulled from an inner pocket. He didn't speak except once to ask if she was warm enough. She said yes. That was the extent of their wedding day conversation. Clara used the time to study him when she thought he wasn't looking. Everything about the Duke was controlled, measured. He sat with perfect posture, never slouching, never fidgeting. When he read his letters, his expression didn't change no matter what they contained. The only sign of life was in his hands, strong, scarred hands that suggested he did more than just sign documents. Working hands. Once she caught him looking at her. Their eyes met for a brief second before he looked away, his expression unreadable. "You should rest," he said. "It's another hour yet." "I'm not tired." Nevertheless, he returned to his letters, conversation closed. Clara turned to the window and watched the landscape change. Gentle hills gave way to rougher terrain. Cultivated fields turned to wild grassland, then to forest. The rain had finally stopped, but low clouds still hung heavy over everything, turning the afternoon into premature twilight. When they finally turned through a set of massive iron gates, Clara sat up straighter. "Welcome to Blackridge," Rowan said. The first hint of something, pride maybe, colored his voice. The manor emerged from the gloom like something from a dark fairy tale. It was huge, far larger than Clara had imagined, built of gray stone that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. 3 stories tall, with wings extending on either side of a central block. Dozens of windows, most dark. Towers on the corners like it was built to withstand a siege. It was impressive. It was imposing. It looked like a prison. The carriage pulled up to the main entrance where a small group of servants waited, lined up formally. As Rowan helped Clara down, the first time he'd touched her since the ceremony, a tall, severe-looking woman stepped forward. "Your Grace, welcome home." Her eyes flicked to Clara with barely concealed assessment. "Your Grace." "Mrs. Hartwell, this is my wife, the Duchess," Rowan said. "She'll need to be shown to her quarters." Her quarters. Not our quarters. Clara filed that information away. "Of course, Your Grace. I've prepared the Duchess's suite in the East Wing, as you requested." Rowan nodded. "Good. Clara, Mrs. Hartwell is the head housekeeper. Anything you need, speak with her." He turned to the older woman. "See that she's made comfortable. She'll want to rest before dinner." "Certainly, Your Grace." Clara waited for Rowan to say something else. Some word of welcome, some acknowledgement that this was their wedding day. Instead, he turned to a man who'd been waiting slightly behind the others. "Garrett, I need to review the northern boundary reports. My study, 10 minutes." "Yes, Your Grace." And without another word to Clara, without even a glance back, the Duke strode into his manor and disappeared. Mrs. Hartwell's expression didn't change, but Clara caught the slight tightening around her eyes. Pity, maybe. Or just confirmation of something the housekeeper already knew. "This way, Your Grace," Mrs. Hartwell said. "I'll have your things brought up directly." Clara followed the housekeeper into Blackridge Manor. The entrance hall was exactly what she'd expected. Cavernous, cold, more impressive than welcoming. Dark wood paneling, portraits of stern-faced ancestors, a massive staircase that split in 2 directions. Their footsteps echoed on the marble floor. They climbed the stairs, went right, then left, then down a long corridor. Clara tried to memorize the route, but quickly lost track. The place was a maze. Finally, Mrs. Hartwell stopped at a door near the end of the east wing and opened it. "The Duchess's suite, Your Grace." Clara stepped inside and immediately understood several things. First, these weren't just rooms. They were a complete apartment with a sitting room, bedroom, dressing room, and private bath. Second, they were beautiful in an impersonal way, like rooms kept ready for a guest who might never arrive. And third, they were as far from the central part of the house as you could get while still technically being inside it. "The Duke's apartments are in the west wing," Mrs. Hartwell said, confirming Clara's suspicions. "Connected by the main corridor. Should you need to reach His Grace, I can show you the way." "That won't be necessary," Clara said quietly. If Rowan wanted to see her, he knew where to find her. Mrs. Hartwell gave that almost imperceptible nod again. "Dinner is at 7. His Grace dines in the small dining room when there are no guests. I'll send someone to show you the way at 1:45. "Mrs. Hartwell," Clara said as the housekeeper turned to leave, "how long have you worked here?" 23 years, Your Grace. I came when the old Duke was still alive. Then you knew the current Duke when he was young. Something flickered across the housekeeper's face. I did, Your Grace. What was he like? Mrs. Hartwell was quiet for a long moment. Then she said carefully, Different. People change, Your Grace, especially when they've lost things. What did he lose? But Mrs. Hartwell just shook her head. That's not my story to tell. Will there be anything else, Your Grace? Clara let her go. She stood in the center of her new sitting room in her wedding dress that she'd worn to marry a stranger, in a house the size of a small village, more alone than she'd ever been in her life. Through the window, she could see the grounds extending into darkness. Somewhere out there was a boundary to all this. Somewhere was the edge of her new cage. She thought about her mother's words in the chapel. You can still say no, even at the altar. But that wasn't true, was it? She'd said yes the moment she agreed to meet the Duke. Maybe even before that. The moment her father's estate started failing, her fate was probably already sealed. This was just the logical conclusion. Clara walked to the window and pressed her hand against the cold glass. In the reflection, she could see a girl in a beautiful wedding dress, alone on what should have been the happiest day of her life. She wondered if Rowan was somewhere in this vast house, having the exact same thought. Somehow, she doubted it. He'd gotten exactly what he wanted: a wife to manage, to produce an heir eventually, to fulfill the social obligations of his position. A transaction completed successfully. There was a knock at the door. A young maid entered with Clara's belongings, one small trunk pathetically inadequate for a duchess. The girl looked nervous. Shall I help you change, Your Grace? Mrs. Hartwell said you'd want to rest before dinner. Clara looked down at her grandmother's wedding dress, at all those tiny buttons her mother had fastened with shaking hands just this morning. It felt like a lifetime ago. Yes, she said. Thank you. The maid, she said her name was Anne, carefully unfastened all the buttons, helped Clara out of the dress, and hung it in the enormous wardrobe that swallowed it up. Clara changed into a simple day dress, one of 3 she owned that weren't completely worn out. Anne started to leave, then hesitated. Your Grace? If I may say so, we're all very glad you're here. The house has been quiet for a long time. Clara managed a small smile. Thank you, Anne. When the girl left, Clara lay down on the bed, her bed now, in her room, in her new life. The ceiling was very high and very far away. She counted the beams crossing it until she lost track. She must have dozed off because the next thing she knew, there was another knock at the door and Anne was back, looking apologetic. It's 7:15, Your Grace. I'm to show you to the dining room. Clara let Anne guide her back through the maze of corridors, down a different staircase, through rooms she didn't recognize. Finally, they reached a door that Anne opened onto a small dining room that could have seated 20 people easily. Rowan was already there, standing by the window with a glass of what looked like whiskey. He'd changed into dinner clothes, still black, still severe. He turned when she entered. I hope your rooms are satisfactory, he said. They're very nice. Thank you. He gestured to the table, which was set for 2 at one end. At least they wouldn't be shouting to each other across 20 feet of polished wood. Dinner was brought in by silent servants, course after course of food Clara barely tasted. Rowan ate methodically, with the same controlled precision he seemed to apply to everything. They didn't speak except for the barest necessities. More wine? No, thank you. The lamb is from our own stock. It's very good. Silence. Clara had never experienced silence like this. It wasn't peaceful. It was oppressive, like a physical weight pressing down on the room. She found herself wanting to say something, anything, just to break it. But every possible topic seemed fraught. The wedding? Too obvious. The weather? Too trivial. Their future? Too terrifying. Finally, as dessert was being cleared, Rowan spoke. I should explain how the household operates. Clara set down her wine glass. All right. Mrs. Hartwell manages the staff in day-to-day operations. She's very competent. You needn't concern yourself with those details unless you want to. He paused. I understand some women enjoy managing a household. If that's something you'd like to take on, we can discuss it. And if I don't? He shrugged slightly. Then Mrs. Hartwell continues as she has been. I see. Clara folded her hands in her lap. What are my responsibilities then? For the first time, Rowan looked uncomfortable. You're the Duchess. You'll be expected to attend certain social functions, represent the estate when necessary. Beyond that, he trailed off. Beyond that, I'm free to do as I please. Within reason. Clara felt something sharp and hot rise in her chest. And what counts as reasonable, Your Grace? His eyes sharpened at her tone. I'm not your jailer, Clara. I have no intention of dictating your every movement. I simply ask that you remember you represent this family now. Act accordingly. Of course. Clara stood up. If that's all, I believe I'll retire. It's been a long day. Rowan stood as well, manners automatic. Of course. I hope you sleep well. Clara made it halfway to the door before he spoke again. Clara. She turned. He looked like he was about to say something, struggled with it, then just shook his head. Good night. Good night, Your Grace. She let Anne guide her back to her distant wing, to her beautiful, impersonal rooms. The bed was turned down, a fire burning in the fireplace. Someone had left a nightgown on the bed. New, expensive, nothing like the worn cotton she was used to. Clara changed, sent Anne away, and climbed into bed. Through the walls she could hear nothing. No footsteps, no voices, no sign of life. Just silence. This was her wedding night. Somewhere in this vast house was her husband. He might as well have been on the moon. Clara pulled the covers up and stared at the ceiling, counting beams again until her eyes grew heavy. Her last thought before sleep took her was that she'd survived the first day. Tomorrow, she'd survive the next one. And the day after that. And the day after that. For however long survival was required, the first week passed in a strange blur of sameness. Clara woke each morning in her enormous bed, ate breakfast alone in her sitting room, and then faced the question that seemed to define her new existence. What now? The manor was hers to explore, Mrs. Hartwell had said, though the housekeeper's tone suggested there were limits to that invitation. Clara tested them anyway. She wandered the corridors, counting rooms she'd never use. She found a library that made her want to weep. Thousands of books, untouched, gathering dust. She discovered a music room with a pianoforte that hadn't been played in years, the keys stiff beneath her experimental fingers. And everywhere, silence. The kind that made her footsteps sound like gunshots. Rowan appeared only at dinner. Every evening at 7, they sat at opposite ends of that absurd table and performed the same careful ritual. He'd ask about her day in the tone of someone fulfilling an obligation. She'd give vague answers. They'd eat in near silence. He'd excuse himself to his study. She'd return to her wing. On the 8th night, Clara broke first. Do you always work this late? She asked as he started to rise from the table. Rowan paused, looking genuinely surprised by the question. Usually, yes. The estate requires. I wasn't criticizing. I was asking. He sat back down slowly, wary. Most nights, yes. There's always something that needs attention. What kind of something? Tonight? He seemed uncertain whether this was a real conversation or some kind of trap. Reviewing yield reports from the northern farms, planning next season's rotation, a dispute between two tenants that needs settling. Sounds tedious. It is. A ghost of something, amusement maybe, crossed his face. But necessary. Clara took a sip of wine, gathering courage. Your land manager, Garrett, could he not handle some of it? He does, but some decisions require my direct involvement. Because you don't trust him? Rowan's eyes sharpened. Because it's my responsibility. They looked at each other across the table. Clara saw the exact moment he started to close off again, to retreat behind that wall of polite distance. What did you do today? He asked, changing the subject. I found your library. Did you? It wasn't a question. It's magnificent and completely neglected. Something flickered in his expression. Discomfort, maybe defensiveness. I'm not much for reading. Your father was, though. Those books were collected by someone who loved them. Rowan's jaw tightened. My father collected a lot of things. The bitterness in his voice surprised her. Before Clara could respond, he stood again. I should get back to those reports. Good night, Clara. And just like that, he was gone. But it was something, a crack, however small, in the perfect composure. Clara started spending her mornings in the library. If Rowan wouldn't tell her about his family, maybe their books would. She found journals, letters, account books going back generations. The Blackridges had ruled this land for over 200 years, growing richer and more powerful with each generation. until the current duke, who seemed determined to turn the manor into a mausoleum. Anne became her unwitting source of information. The young maid was naturally chatty and lonely enough to welcome Clara's questions. "Has the duke always been so reserved?" Clara asked one morning as Anne helped her dress. Anne's hands fumbled with the buttons. "Oh, I couldn't say, Your Grace. I've only been here 3 years." "But you must have noticed things." The girl bit her lip, clearly torn between discretion and the desire to gossip. Gossip won. "Well, Mrs. Hartwell says he used to be different before." "Before what?" "Before Miss Evelyn died." Clara's hands stilled, the fiancé her mother had mentioned. "What happened to her?" Anne's voice dropped to a whisper. "She drowned, Your Grace. In the lake on the north side of the property. They were to be married in a month." "That's terrible." "It was worse than terrible, Your Grace." Anne glanced at the door, making sure they were alone. "They say he found her himself. That he tried to save her, but the current was too strong. That he carried her body all the way back to the manor and wouldn't let anyone touch her until her family arrived." Clara felt something twist in her chest. "How long ago was this?" 6 years, Your Grace. He hasn't been the same since, they say. Used to smile, used to laugh, used to care about things beyond work and duty." Anne shook her head. "Now it's like he's just going through motions." That night at dinner, Clara looked at Rowan differently. She saw the careful way he held himself, the way he never quite relaxed. She wondered if he saw Evelyn every time he looked at the empty chair across from him. If that's why he kept Clara at such a distance, not cruelty, but self-preservation. "You're staring," Rowan said without looking up from his plate. Clara didn't deny it. "I'm trying to figure you out." "There's nothing to figure out. Everyone's a puzzle, Your Grace. You're just a particularly difficult one." He did look up then, something almost like amusement in his eyes. "And what have you concluded so far?" "That you're afraid." The amusement vanished. "Afraid of what?" "I don't know yet." Clara met his gaze steadily. "But whatever it is, it's got you locked up tighter than your own gates." For a moment, she thought he might actually respond honestly. Then his expression went blank again. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" Rowan stood abruptly. "I have work to do." "Of course you do." He paused at the door, his back to her. "You should stop listening to servant gossip, Clara. It's beneath you." "What else am I supposed to do?" The words came out sharper than she'd intended. "You won't talk to me. You barely look at me. I'm a ghost in your house, Rowan. At least the servants acknowledge I exist." He turned slowly. "What do you want from me?" "I don't know. Conversation? Honesty? Some acknowledgement that we're both stuck in this situation?" "We're not stuck. You agreed to this arrangement." "Because I had no choice." "There's always a choice," Clara laughed, bitter. "Says the man who's never had to make one. You bought yourself a wife like you'd buy a horse. Don't pretend that was a choice for either of us." Rowan's face went very still. "Is that what you think? That I wanted this?" "Didn't you?" "I wanted—" He stopped, jaw working. "I wanted to do my duty to my name, to secure the line. That's all." "How romantic." "I never promised you romance, Clara. I promised you security. A home. The protection of my name, if that's not enough." "It's not." The words were out before she could stop them. "It's not enough to just exist in the same house as someone. We're married, Rowan. Doesn't that mean anything to you? It means you're under my protection. It means you'll never want for anything material, except a husband who can stand to be in the same room with me for more than an hour." The silence that followed was arctic. "If you're quite finished," Rowan said, his voice like ice, "I'll bid you good night." Clara watched him leave, her heart hammering. She'd pushed too hard. She knew it even as the words were coming out. But the frustration had been building for days, and something about the way he held himself so carefully apart made her want to crack that composure, to make him feel something even if it was anger. She got her wish. The next morning, a note appeared under her door. "I'll be away for 3 days, inspecting the northern properties. Mrs. Hartwell has instructions to provide anything you need. R." No apology, no explanation, just absence. Clara crumpled the note and threw it in the fire. Fine. If he wanted distance, she'd give him distance. The problem was, distance didn't make the loneliness any easier. If anything, it made it worse. At least when Rowan was there, Clara had something to push against. Now there was just emptiness. She filled the time exploring further afield. On the second day of Rowan's absence, she ventured outside for the first time since arriving. The grounds were extensive, formal gardens near the house giving way to wilder parkland, then forest. In the distance, she could see the shimmer of water. The lake, she realized, where Evelyn drowned. Clara found herself walking toward it without conscious decision. The path was overgrown, clearly unused. Branches caught at her dress. Her shoes, meant for manicured lawns, struggled with the rough ground. The lake appeared suddenly through the trees. It was smaller than she'd expected and darker. The water looked black under the overcast sky, opaque. You wouldn't be able to see the bottom even in daylight. There was a small dock, half rotted. Clara walked out onto it carefully, testing each board. At the end, she sat down and looked at the water. 6 years ago, a woman drowned here. A woman Rowan loved enough to marry. Clara tried to imagine what it must have been like. The panic, the desperate search, the moment he realized he was too late. No wonder he was afraid. "Your Grace." Clara jumped, nearly falling into the water. She turned to see Mrs. Hartwell hurrying down the path, her normally composed face tight with worry. "Your Grace, you shouldn't be out here alone. The path is dangerous, and the lake—" "I'm fine, Mrs. Hartwell." Nevertheless, the housekeeper had reached the shore, breathing hard. "His Grace would be most displeased to know you'd come here." "His Grace isn't here." "Which is precisely why I must insist you return to the house." Mrs. Hartwell's voice was firm. "Please, Your Grace." Clara looked at the lake one more time, then back at the housekeeper's worried face. She sighed and stood carefully. "All right." They walked back in silence until they were clear of the trees. Then Clara said, "You knew her, Evelyn." It wasn't a question. Mrs. Hartwell's step faltered slightly. "I did, Your Grace." "What was she like?" "Kind, gentle, everything a duchess should be." Mrs. Hartwell's voice was carefully neutral, but Clara heard the implication. Everything Clara wasn't. "He loved her very much." "He did." Mrs. Hartwell stopped walking, seemed to struggle with something. "Your Grace, if I may speak plainly." "Please." "His Grace has been through significant loss. It's made him cautious, but that doesn't mean he's incapable of caring. It just means he's afraid of it." "I know." "Do you?" The housekeeper's eyes were sharp. "Because from where I stand, you're both circling each other like wounded animals, too proud to admit you might need the same thing." Clara felt heat rise to her face. "And what's that?" "Someone to stop being so damn lonely with." The bluntness shocked a laugh out of Clara. "Mrs. Hartwell." The older woman's lips twitched. "I've been here 23 years, Your Grace. I've earned the right to speak my mind occasionally." Her expression sobered. "But I mean it. His Grace needs someone who won't break, who won't leave, someone who'll stay even when he pushes them away." "I can't make him love me." "No, but you can make him see you. The real question is whether you want to badly enough." Clara thought about that as they walked back to the manor. Did she want Rowan to see her? Or did she just want to matter to someone, anyone, after feeling invisible for so long? By the time Rowan returned 3 days later, Clara had made a decision. She was tired of waiting for him to notice her. If he wanted a ghost wife, fine. But she was done playing that role. She started with small changes. She moved some furniture in her sitting room. She hung her own paintings, amateur watercolors, nothing impressive, but hers. She took over a corner of the library and filled it with her favorite books. At dinner that first night back, Rowan noticed. "You've been busy," he said, his tone unreadable. "I got bored." "I can see that." He paused. "The changes are fine." "I wasn't asking permission." His eyebrow rose. "Clearly not." They ate in silence for a few minutes. Then Rowan said, "I heard you went to the lake." Claire's hand tightened on her fork. "I did." Mrs. Hartwell was concerned. Mrs. Hartwell worries too much. The path is dangerous, the lake even more so. Clara looked up at him. "Is that what you tell yourself? That the danger is in the lake?" Rowan's jaw clenched. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing." Clara pushed food around her plate. I'm sorry I went there. I didn't know it would upset anyone. I'm not upset. No, you're never upset. You're never anything. Clara, I'm tired, Rowan. I think I'll skip dessert tonight. She left him sitting there, and some small, petty part of her enjoyed the surprised look on his face. The next morning, Clara woke to find a note slipped under her door again. Her heart sank. Another trip, probably. But when she opened it, she found something unexpected. If you want to understand the estate, meet me in the stables at 9. Wear something you don't mind getting dirty. Clara read it 3 times, looking for the trick. There wasn't one. It was an invitation. Awkward, gruff, very Rowan, but an invitation nonetheless. She was at the stables at 8:45. Rowan was already there, wearing work clothes instead of his usual formal attire. It made him look younger, less forbidding. He had 2 horses saddled and ready. You ride? He asked when he saw her. I used to. It's been a while. This is Dancer. She's gentle. He handed her the reins of a sweet-faced mare. I thought you might want to see some of the land. Clara mounted carefully, her muscles remembering movements she hadn't made in years. Rowan swung onto his own horse, a massive black gelding, with easy grace. Keep up, he said, and rode out of the stable yard. Clara followed, and for the first time since arriving at Blackridge, she felt something like hope. They rode for hours. Rowan showed her the boundaries of the estate, miles and miles of land, farms, forests, villages. He pointed out improvements he'd made, problems he was working on. When he talked about the land, his whole demeanor changed. He became animated, passionate even. This is what you love, Clara said as they paused on a hill overlooking a valley of farmland. It's my responsibility. That's not what I said. Rowan looked at her for a long moment. Yes, he finally admitted. This is what I love. Why? He was quiet, considering. Because it doesn't leave. Because if you take care of it, it takes care of you. Because it's honest. You get out what you put in. He paused. Because it can't die on you. There it was. The truth behind the walls. Evelyn, Clara said softly. Rowan's whole body went rigid. We're not talking about her. Why not? She's the reason you... I said we're not talking about her. His voice was sharp enough to cut. If you want to continue this ride, drop it. Clara bit back her response. Pushing wouldn't help. Not yet. They rode in tense silence for a while. Then Rowan pointed to a cluster of buildings in the distance. That's the tenant village. 200 families. Most have been here for generations. Do you know them? The families? Most of them? Yes. As if to prove it, they were stopped several times on the ride back by workers who needed to speak with Rowan. Clara watched him interact with them, listened to him ask about a sick child, remember a worker's wife by name, promised to look into a housing repair. This was the man Mrs. Hartwell had hinted at. Not cold, just careful. You're good with them, Clara said when they were alone again. Rowan shrugged. They're my people. They depend on me. And that doesn't scare you. That kind of dependence? He gave her a sharp look. That's different. How? It just is. They'd reached the stables. As Rowan helped her dismount, his hands strong around her waist, Clara said, Thank you. For today. It was instructive. You should understand what you've married into. That's not why I enjoyed it. Rowan's hands lingered for just a second longer than necessary. Then he stepped back. We should do it again, if you'd like. I would. Something passed between them. Not quite friendship, not quite trust, but maybe the beginning of both. That night at dinner, the silence was less oppressive. Rowan asked about a book she'd been reading. She asked about a problem with one of the farms. They actually talked, halting and careful, but real. When Rowan stood to leave, Clara said, You could stay. Have your port here instead of your study. He hesitated, clearly tempted and equally clearly uncertain. I have work. You always have work. Stay anyway. Why? Because I'm asking you to. Rowan sat back down. They talked until nearly midnight, not about anything important. Books, weather, estate gossip. But it felt like progress. When he finally left, he paused at the door. Clara? Yes? Today was good. It wasn't much. But coming from Rowan, it felt like a declaration. Over the next few weeks, a pattern emerged. They'd ride in the mornings when weather permitted. Dinner conversations grew longer. Rowan started appearing in the library when Clara was there, choosing a book and reading in silence across from her. Small things, but they added up. Clara found herself watching him more, noticing details. The scar on his left hand from some long-ago accident, the way he rubbed his temples when he was tired, the rare, genuine smile when something actually amused him. She was starting to understand him, and that was dangerous because understanding was leading to something else, something she hadn't planned on. It came to a head one evening in late December. They'd been married nearly 2 months. Snow had started falling earlier that day, and by dinner the world outside was white and still. Rowan was distracted, barely touching his food. "What's wrong?" Clara finally asked. "Storm's getting worse. The northern road will be impassable by morning." "Is that a problem?" 3 families up there are low on supplies. I meant to send a wagon yesterday, but the damn axle broke." He shoved his plate away. "They'll be cut off for days, maybe weeks if this keeps up." Clara watched him spiral into worry. "Can you reach them on horseback?" "Maybe, but carrying enough supplies for 3 families?" He shook his head. "I'd need pack horses, men who know the route in snow. So organize it. It's nearly dark. The storm's getting worse." "Rowan," Clara's voice cut through his agitation, "are those families in danger?" "They could be if they run out of—" "Then stop talking and start moving." Something in her tone snapped him out of it. He looked at her, really looked, and she saw him make a decision. "Right." He stood. "I'll need to rouse the stable hands, get the supplies from the storehouse. I'll help." "Clara, it's freezing out there." "I said, I'll help." For a moment she thought he'd argue. Then he just nodded. "All right, come on." The next 3 hours were chaos. Clara helped Rowan organize supplies, wrangle resistant horses, convince skeptical men that yes, they were really going out in a blizzard. She held lanterns, counted blankets, double-checked provisions. When the party was finally ready to leave, 6 men, 8 horses, enough supplies to sustain 3 families for a month, Rowan pulled her aside. "Thank you," he said, "for this. Don't thank me, just come back." He looked at her strangely. "I will." "Promise me." "Clara." "Rowan, promise me you'll come back." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "I promise." Then he mounted up and rode into the storm. Clara waited in the stable, refusing to go inside where it was warm. Mrs. Hartwell brought her tea that went cold in her hands. Anne tried to convince her to rest. She ignored them both. It was nearly dawn when she heard hoofbeats. The relief was so intense she felt dizzy. Rowan dismounted stiffly, covered in snow, exhausted. When he saw her, something in his expression cracked. "You waited." "I told you I would." He crossed to her in 3 long strides and pulled her into his arms. Clara froze, shocked. Rowan never touched her beyond the bare minimum of manners. "I thought—" His voice was rough against her hair. "When I was out there, all I could think was that you'd be asleep, that no one would be waiting." Clara's arms came up slowly, carefully, returning the embrace. "I was waiting." They stood like that for a long moment, snow melting off Rowan's coat onto her dress. Then he pulled back, looking almost embarrassed. "You should get inside, you're freezing." "So are you." "I need to see to the horses. The stable hands can manage. Come inside, Rowan." He let her lead him back to the manor, up the stairs. They reached the main corridor where it split, left to his wing, right to hers. Rowan stopped. "Clara." "Yes?" "What are we doing?" She knew what he was really asking. Where was this going? What did any of it mean? "I don't know," she said honestly. "But I think we're doing it together now. Isn't that enough?" He looked at her with something raw in his eyes. Want, maybe. Or fear, possibly both. "I can't—" He stopped, started again. "I can't be what you need." "How do you know what I need?" "Because you deserve someone who can love you the way—" He cut himself off. "The way you loved her." Rowan flinched. "Yes." Clara stepped closer. "I'm not asking for that. I'm just asking you to stop running from this. From us." "There is no us." "Isn't there?" She gestured between them. "The rides, the dinners, tonight? What do you call that?" "I call it—" He struggled. "I call it dangerous." Why? Because I can't lose someone else. The words exploded out of him. I can't watch someone else die. I can't survive it again. Don't you understand that? Clara's heart cracked. So your solution is to never let anyone close enough to matter? Yes, it's safer. It's not safer. It's just slower. You're still dying, Rowan, just by inches instead of all at once. He stared at her, something wild in his eyes. For a moment, Clara thought he might actually break, might actually let her in. Then his expression shuddered. Good night, Clara. He turned and walked away, his wet boots leaving tracks on the polished floor. Clara watched him go, her heart hammering against her ribs. She'd pushed too hard again. She knew it, but she couldn't help it, couldn't keep watching him lock himself away. Back in her room, she changed into dry clothes with shaking hands. She'd almost had him. For just a moment there, in the snow-filled stable yard, she'd felt him start to open, and then he'd slammed shut again, harder than before. Clara climbed into bed and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow, he'd probably be gone again, off inspecting some distant property, putting physical distance between them to match the emotional. She was so tired of being careful, so tired of waiting for him to feel safe enough to let her close. Maybe it was time to stop waiting. Maybe it was time to make him see what he was throwing away. Through the walls, she heard a door slam, then another, then silence. Rowan, in his wing, probably thinking the exact same thing she was. How much longer could they keep doing this? Clara closed her eyes and made a decision. Tomorrow, one way or another, something was going to change. She was done being a ghost in his house. She was done being a ghost in his house. The change didn't come quietly. Clara woke the next morning with something hard and bright burning in her chest. Not anger exactly, but its sharper cousin. Determination. She dressed without calling for Anne, choosing one of her older dresses, something practical. Then she walked straight to the West Wing. She'd never been to Rowan's apartments. The unspoken rule was clear, his space, off limits. But rules only worked if both people agreed to follow them, and Clara was done with one-sided agreements. She knocked once on his study door, then opened it without waiting for an answer. Rowan looked up from his desk, startled. He was already dressed, though it couldn't have been past 7. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he'd slept as poorly as she had. Clara, what? I want to learn the estate accounts, she said. He blinked. What? The accounts, the books. I want to understand how this place operates, financially. Rowan set down his pen carefully. Why? Because I'm the Duchess, and I should know these things. Because you're running yourself into the ground trying to manage everything alone. Because I'm bored out of my mind and I'm good with numbers. She crossed her arms. Take your pick. Clara, the estate finances are complex. Then teach me. It's not appropriate. Why not? Because I'm a woman? Because you don't trust me? She stepped closer to the desk. Or because letting me help means admitting you might actually need someone? Rowan's jaw tightened. That's not fair. None of this is fair, Rowan, but we're stuck with each other, so we might as well make the best of it. They stared at each other across the desk. Clara watched him war with himself, pride versus practicality, fear versus need. Finally, he pushed a ledger toward her. Fine. But don't blame me when you're bored to tears in an hour. Clara pulled up a chair and opened the book. I'll take my chances. That's how it started. Every morning, Clara appeared in Rowan's study at 7. He'd protest, then relent. She'd work through the accounts while he handled correspondence. Sometimes they'd work in silence. Sometimes he'd explain something about crop yields or tenant agreements. Slowly, grudgingly, he let her in. Not emotionally, not yet, but practically. And for Clara, it was a start. Mrs. Hartwell noticed the change immediately. You're looking more settled, Your Grace, she said one afternoon as Clara reviewed household expenses in the library. I'm keeping busy. You're doing more than that. The housekeeper's expression was approving. You're making yourself necessary. Clara looked up sharply. Is that what I'm doing? Isn't it? Mrs. Hartwell's smile was knowing. Make yourself too useful to ignore, too present to forget. Smart strategy. It's not a strategy. Clara stopped. Was it a strategy? She didn't know anymore. The line between helping because it needed doing and helping because it kept her near Rowan had blurred. Nothing wrong with strategy, Your Grace, Mrs. Hartwell said, especially when you're fighting a war. I'm not fighting anything. Aren't you? The housekeeper gathered the tea things. Could have fooled me. That night at dinner, Rowan actually looked at her instead of through her. You found the error in the October accounts, he said. Clara tried not to show her satisfaction. The timber sale numbers didn't match the delivery receipts. Either someone made a mistake or someone skimming. I'll look into it. He paused. Thank you. You're welcome. They ate in what passed for comfortable silence now. Then Rowan said, You're good at this. Better than I expected. Was that supposed to be a compliment? Yes. Actually, something almost like humor touched his expression. I'm told I'm not very good at those. You're not good at a lot of things involving human interaction. True. He didn't seem offended. Evelyn used to say I'd make an excellent hermit if only I weren't stuck being a duke. It was the first time he'd mentioned her voluntarily. Clara's heart stuttered, but she kept her voice casual. She sounds like she knew you well. She did. Rowan's expression went distant. We grew up together. Her family's estate bordered ours. She understood this life, understood me. He stopped, seeming to realize he'd said too much. Anyway, Clara echoed. She wanted to ask more, wanted to understand the woman who'd claimed the part of Rowan she couldn't seem to reach. But pushing now would shatter this fragile opening. Instead, she said, The spring planting schedule needs review. Some of the rotation plans don't make sense given the soil reports. Rowan latched onto the safer topic with visible relief. They spent the next hour debating crop strategy, and if it wasn't romance, it was at least real, small victories. Clara collected them like stones in her pocket. Then February brought a test neither of them expected. Clara woke in the middle of the night to shouting. She threw on a robe and ran into the corridor to find chaos, servants rushing past, smoke smell in the air. Fire! Someone yelled. The West Stable! Clara's blood went cold. The West Wing. Rowan's wing. She ran toward the commotion, fighting against the tide of servants heading the other way. Outside, she could see flames licking at the stable roof, orange against the black sky. And there, illuminated by the fire, was Rowan, not organizing the response, not directing the bucket brigade, running directly into the burning building. No! Clara screamed, but her voice was lost in the chaos. She watched in horror as he disappeared into the smoke. Seconds ticked by. 10. 20. The roof groaned, sagging. Then Rowan emerged, dragging something. No, someone. One of the stable boys unconscious. Rowan's coat was smoking, his face black with soot. He laid the boy down and immediately turned back toward the building. Clara didn't think. She just moved. She caught Rowan's arm as he tried to go back in. Stop! He tried to shake her off. There are horses. The horses can die. You can't. There are 3 horses still in there. I don't care. Clara planted herself in front of him. You're not going back in there. Clara, move. No. His eyes were wild, desperate. I can save them. I can still... You'll die trying. Better than standing here doing nothing. He tried to push past her, but Clara held on with a strength born of pure terror. Rowan, please don't do this. Let go of me. No. Clara was crying now, she realized distantly. I already watched you half kill yourself in that storm. I'm not watching you burn to death for 3 horses. Something in her voice must have reached him because he stopped fighting. He stood there, chest heaving, staring at the burning stable with something like grief on his face. Behind them, part of the roof collapsed with a shower of sparks. The terrible screaming of horses cut off abruptly. Rowan made a sound like he'd been punched. Clara kept her grip on his arm, her fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. She didn't trust him not to bolt the second she let go. Your Grace! Garrett appeared through the smoke. The main house is safe. We've got the fire contained. Rowan just nodded, still staring at the burning building. The fire burned itself out over the next few hours. By dawn, all that remained was a blackened skeleton and 3 dead horses. The stable boy Rowan had saved survived, but just barely. Clara found Rowan in the ruins as the sun came up. He was standing in what used to be the main stall, looking at nothing. You saved him, she said quietly. The boy. He'll live because of you. 3 horses died. Yes. I should have been faster. should have gotten to them. You did everything you could. Rowan's laugh was bitter. Did I? Or did I freeze? Again. What are you talking about? He finally looked at her, his eyes red-rimmed and haunted. Do you know why Evelyn drowned? Why I couldn't save her? Clara's stomach dropped. Rowan? Because I froze. I saw her go under and I just stood there trying to decide the best way to reach her, the safest approach. By the time I moved, it was too late. His voice cracked. I think about it every day, every single day. What if I just jumped in immediately? What if I'd acted instead of thinking? You can't know that would have changed anything. Can I? He gestured at the burned stable. Tonight I did the same thing. Stood there trying to organize everyone, make a plan. And while I was planning, those horses died. You saved a child's life. I should have saved both. You're not a god, Rowan. You can't save everyone. I should be able to save someone. The words tore out of him. Anyone, but I can't. I failed Evelyn. I failed those horses. I fail at everything that actually matters. Clara grabbed his face in both hands, forcing him to look at her. Listen to me. What happened to Evelyn was not your fault. What happened tonight was not your fault. There are things in this world we cannot control, no matter how hard we try. Then what's the point? His voice was barely a whisper. What's the point of any of it if we can't protect the people we... He stopped. The people we what? Clara's heart was hammering. Say it, Rowan. I can't. Why not? Because it makes it real, and if it's real, I can lose it. Clara felt something break open in her chest. You already have lost it. You've been living like you're dead for 6 years. At least if you let yourself care, you'd actually be alive when the losing happens. Rowan pulled away from her hands. You don't understand. Then make me understand. Stop hiding behind this wall and talk to me. Actually talk to me. What do you want me to say? That I'm terrified every single day? That letting you into my study, letting you help with the accounts, letting you exist in my life at all scares me more than that fire did? He was breathing hard now, the words spilling out like he couldn't stop them. That every time you smile at me, I think about how it would feel to lose you. That I lie awake at night trying to figure out how to keep you at arm's length, because if I let you any closer and something happens, nothing's going to happen to me. You don't know that. Evelyn thought she was going for a swim. Those horses thought they were safe in their stalls. Life doesn't give you warnings, Clara. It just takes and takes and takes until there's nothing left. Clara stepped closer. So your solution is to have nothing worth taking? Yes. That's the most cowardly thing I've ever heard. Rowan's head snapped back like she'd slapped him. What? You heard me. It's cowardly. You talk about failing Evelyn, about not being able to save people, but the real failure is this, letting fear turn you into something half alive, pushing away anyone who might actually care about you because it's easier than risking hurt. Clara's voice was shaking now. I lost my home, my family, my entire life to marry a man who treats me like I'm made of glass and poison all at once. And you know what? I did it. I'm here. I show up every morning to your study, even though I know you wish I wouldn't. I wait up when you ride out in storms. I stand between you and burning buildings because apparently someone has to. I never asked you to do any of that. I know, that's what makes it real. I'm not doing it because you asked or because it's my duty. I'm doing it because... She stopped, the words catching in her throat. Because why? Rowan's voice was dangerous now. Say it. If you're going to demand honesty from me, you don't get to hide either. Clara looked at him, covered in soot and ash, eyes wild with fear and grief, beautiful in his brokenness, and knew there was no going back from this. Because I'm falling in love with you, you idiot! The silence that followed was absolute. Rowan stared at her like she'd grown a second head. No. Yes. No, you're not. You can't be. I'm fairly certain I know my own feelings, Rowan. You're confused. It's proximity, or gratitude, or it's love. Clara's voice was steady now. Messy and complicated and completely inconvenient, but love. Stop. Rowan backed away from her. Stop right now. Why? Because it scares you? Yes. Because it terrifies me. His voice broke. Because the last person who loved me died, and I can't. I won't. Won't what? Let yourself feel something. Let yourself be happy for even a second. I don't deserve happy. The words hung in the air between them, raw and terrible. Clara felt tears burning down her face. Why not? What crime did you commit that you have to punish yourself forever? I let her die, Rowan said, and he was crying too now, ugly and real. I stood there and I let her die, and I don't get to just move on from that. I don't get to fall in love again, like it never happened. She wouldn't want this. Clara's voice was gentle now. Whatever she was to you, I can't believe she'd want you to spend the rest of your life alone. You didn't know her, no. But I know you, and the man I know, the one who rides out in blizzards to save families, who runs into burning buildings for his people, who works himself to exhaustion trying to take care of everyone. That man deserves to be loved, even if he can't see it. Rowan was shaking his head, backing away further. This is a mistake. All of it. I never should have. You should leave. Go back to your family. I'll settle an income on you you'll never want for anything. I'm not leaving. Clara, I'm not leaving. She advanced on him, furious now. You can push me away all you want. You can lock yourself in your study and pretend I don't exist. But I'm not going anywhere. We made vows, Rowan, for better or worse. And this is definitely worse, but I meant what I said. You didn't say anything. Your father did. Then I'm saying it now. I'm staying. They stood in the ruins of the stable, both of them filthy and exhausted and crying, neither one willing to back down. Finally, Rowan said, Why? Because someone has to fight for you since you won't fight for yourself. I don't want you to fight for me. I want you to be safe. Safe from what? You? Clara laughed, bitter. Rowan, you're the safest person I know. You'd never hurt me. Not on purpose. But love. Love destroys things. It gets inside you and makes you vulnerable, and then when it's ripped away... He couldn't finish. Clara took his hand. He tried to pull away, but she held firm. I'm not Evelyn. I'm not going to drown or disappear or leave you. I'm right here. For now. For now is all anyone has. It's not enough. It has to be. Rowan looked at their joined hands like he couldn't quite believe they were real. I don't know how to do this. How to let someone... He swallowed hard. I don't know how to not be afraid. Then be afraid. But be afraid with me instead of alone. For a moment, one perfect, fragile moment, Clara thought he might actually say yes, might actually let himself take what she was offering. Then he pulled his hand away. I can't, he whispered. Clara, I'm sorry. I can't. He turned and walked away, leaving her standing in the ashes. Clara stood there until long after he'd disappeared into the manor. The sun rose higher, warming the ruins but not her. Staff bustled past, cleaning up, assessing damage. No one bothered her. Finally, she walked back inside. Not to her wing, to Rowan's study. She found him at his desk, head in his hands. I meant what I said, Clara told him. I'm not leaving, but I'm also done waiting for you to figure out that being alive means sometimes things hurt. Rowan didn't look up. Clara, I'm going to visit my family for a week. When I come back, you need to decide. Are we going to actually try to build something here, or am I just going to be furniture you occasionally notice? That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair, but those are the options. She headed for the door, then stopped. And Rowan? If you choose wrong, I'm still staying. I told you. I meant my vows. But I'll stop fighting for us. I'll be a perfectly cordial stranger you happen to be married to. Is that what you want? He finally looked at her. No. Then figure out what you do want. You have a week. Clara left before he could respond. She packed quickly, sent word to her family that she was coming, and was in a carriage by noon. As Blackridge Manor disappeared behind her, she wondered if she'd just made a terrible mistake. Giving Rowan space to think seemed wise, but it also gave him space to build his walls even higher. The week with her family was strange. They treated her like a visiting dignitary, all careful politeness and formal conversation. Her mother kept asking if everything was all right with a worried expression. Tom barely spoke to her. Her father avoided being alone with her entirely. She realized with a dull ache that she didn't belong here anymore. This wasn't home. It hadn't been home for a while. Which meant home was Blackridge, a cold manor with a broken man who couldn't decide whether to love her or run from her. Perfect. On the fifth day, a letter arrived. Clara recognized Rowan's handwriting immediately. Her hands shook as she opened it. Clara, I am not good with words. I am better with actions, with duty, with things that can be measured and controlled. Feelings are none of those things. But you were right. About all of it. I am afraid. I am a coward. I have been running from anything that might matter because mattering means losing, and I have lost enough. I don't know if I can be what you need. I don't know if I can stop being afraid, but I know that this week without you has been worse than any of the 6 years before you arrived. I know that my study feels empty without you in it. I know that I keep turning to tell you something and remembering you're not here. I don't know if that's love, but it might be the beginning of it. Come home, please. Clara read it 3 times, her heart doing complicated things in her chest. She left the next morning. The journey back to Blackridge felt endless. Clara rehearsed a dozen different speeches, imagined 100 different scenarios. Would he be waiting for her? Would he have changed his mind? Would this be the beginning of something real or just another false start? The carriage pulled up to the manor in late afternoon. Clara climbed out before it had fully stopped, her eyes searching. Rowan was there. Standing on the steps, looking like he hadn't slept in days. They stared at each other. You came back, he said. You asked me to. I wasn't sure you would. Clara walked toward him slowly. I wasn't sure you'd be here. Where else would I be? She stopped at the bottom of the steps, looking up at him. I don't know, hiding in your study? Inspecting a distant property, anywhere but here. I've been here every day, Rowan said quietly. Waiting. For what? For you. He came down the steps until they were level. Clara, He stopped, started again. I'm not good at this. At feelings. At being vulnerable. It feels like standing on a cliff edge. I know, but I'm tired of being safe. I'm tired of being alone. I'm tired of pretending that having you in my life hasn't changed everything. Clara's breath caught. Rowan, let me finish, please. He took her hands, his grip almost painful. I can't promise I won't be afraid. I can't promise I won't mess this up. But I can promise I'll try. To be present. To be honest. To let you in. That's all I'm asking. Is it? His eyes searched her face. Because I think you're asking for more than that. I think you're asking me to love you, and I don't know if I remember how. Clara squeezed his hands. Then we'll figure it out together. What if I can't? What if I'm too broken? Then you'll be broken and loved instead of broken and alone. Seems like an improvement to me. Rowan made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Then he pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. I missed you, he said against her hair. I missed you. He could destroy me. It could save you. He pulled back just enough to look at her. How are you so brave? I'm not brave. I'm just tired of both of us being miserable. Rowan's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. If we do this, if I try, you have to promise me something. What? Promise me you'll be patient, that you won't give up on me when I backslide, because I will. I'll panic and pull away and try to run. And I'll be there when you're ready to stop running. You're sure? Clara pressed her hand over his, holding it against her face. I've never been more sure of anything. Rowan leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he kissed her. It wasn't perfect or smooth. His lips were chapped, his hands shaking. Clara tasted salt, tears, though she wasn't sure whose, but it was real, raw and messy, and absolutely real. When they finally broke apart, Rowan rested his forehead against hers. What happens now? He asked. Now we go inside, we have dinner, we talk about boring estate business, and tomorrow we do it again. That's it? That's everything. Rowan nodded slowly, then he took her hand and led her inside. Mrs. Hartwell was waiting in the hall, trying and failing to look like she hadn't been watching through the window. Welcome home, Your Grace, she said to Clara, her eyes warm. It's good to be home. That night, they had dinner in the small dining room like always. But Rowan sat next to her instead of across from her. Small progress, real progress. Tell me about your family, he said. How was the visit? Clara told him. About her mother's worry, her father's distance, Tom's silence, about feeling like a stranger in her own childhood home. "I'm sorry," Rowan said. "That must have been difficult." "It was clarifying, actually. Made me realize this is home now. Here. With you." Rowan's hand found hers under the table. "Even with all my baggage?" "Especially with it. Makes you human." They talked long into the night. Really talked, for the first time. Rowan told her about his childhood, about the pressure of being the heir, about Evelyn. Clara told him about the slow collapse of her family's fortunes, about the powerlessness of watching everything fall apart. "We're quite a pair," Rowan said finally. "Both of us broken in different ways. Maybe that's why we fit." He looked at her for a long moment. "I want to try, really try. But I need you to know, this won't be easy. I've spent 6 years building walls. They don't come down overnight." "I know. And there will be moments when I'll want to run, and I'll let you. As long as you come back." Rowan stood, pulling her up with him. "Stay with me tonight, not—" He flushed. "Not like that. Not yet. Just stay. I don't want to be alone." Clara's heart nearly broke at the vulnerability in his voice. "Okay." They walked to his wing together. His rooms were larger than hers, more lived in. Books everywhere, papers stacked on every surface, a fire burning low in the grate. "It's a mess," Rowan said, suddenly self-conscious. "It's perfect." They lay down on his bed, fully clothed, just holding each other. Clara could feel Rowan's heart racing against her back. "This is terrifying," he whispered. "I know. What if I can't—" "Rowan, stop thinking. Just be here. With me. Right now." She felt him take a shuddering breath. Then slowly, gradually, he relaxed. Clara was drifting off to sleep when she heard him say, so quietly she almost missed it, "I think I could love you, if you let me." She turned in his arms, finding his eyes in the darkness. "I'm letting you. Even knowing I'll probably mess it up? Especially knowing that." Rowan kissed her again, softer this time. When they broke apart, he said, "Thank you. For being stubborn. For not giving up. Thank you for letting me in." They fell asleep like that, tangled together, and for the first time since Evelyn died, Rowan didn't have nightmares. But outside, the wind was picking up, storm clouds gathering on the horizon, and in the morning, everything would change in ways neither of them could predict. But outside, the wind was picking up, storm clouds gathering on the horizon, and in the morning, everything would change in ways neither of them could predict. Clara woke to find Rowan already gone, his side of the bed cold. For a moment, panic seized her. Had he run after all? Changed his mind in the harsh light of day? Then she saw the note on his pillow. "Early meeting with tenants about spring planting. Didn't want to wake you. Join me for breakfast after?" Such a small thing. But the fact that he'd left a note at all, that he'd thought about her waking alone and wondering, it meant something. Clara dressed quickly and made her way to the breakfast room. Rowan was already there, deep in conversation with Garrett. He looked up when she entered and something in his face softened. "Morning," he said, and the word held more warmth than she'd heard in months. "Morning," Garrett cleared his throat diplomatically. "I'll just go check on those survey maps, Your Grace." When they were alone, Rowan stood and pulled out Clara's chair. As she sat, he pressed a quick kiss to the top of her head. So brief she might have imagined it, except for the slight flush on his cheeks after. "Sleep well?" he asked. "Better than I have in weeks. You?" "Same." He poured her tea, remembered without asking that she took it with honey. "I have meetings most of the morning, but this afternoon, would you ride with me? There's something I want to show you." "Of course." They ate in comfortable quiet, sharing the newspaper, Rowan occasionally reading sections aloud. It was so normal, so domestic, that Clara felt something warm settle in her chest. This was what she'd been fighting for. The morning passed quickly. Clara worked on the household accounts while Rowan dealt with estate business. Around noon, a commotion from the front of the manor drew her attention. Voices, multiple, agitated. Clara set down her pen and went to investigate. In the entrance hall, she found 3 well-dressed strangers arguing with Mrs. Hartwell. An older couple and a young woman, all clearly gentry. "Must see the Duke immediately," the older man was saying. "We've traveled 2 days for this meeting." As I've explained, sir, His Grace is occupied with urgent estate matters, Mrs. Hartwell replied, her tone professionally cool. If you'd care to wait in the drawing room, we've been waiting. We've sent letters. We've tried to arrange a proper meeting. The woman's voice was sharp. My daughter deserves better than to be ignored. Clara's stomach sank as pieces clicked together. The young woman, blonde, beautiful, delicate, kept glancing toward the corridor that led to Rowan's study. Perhaps I can help, Clara said, stepping forward. I'm the Duchess. 3 pairs of eyes swung toward her. The older woman's gaze turned assessing, cold. The Duchess? She repeated. How convenient. I'm Lady Margaret Thornbury. This is my husband, Lord Thornbury, and our daughter, Catherine. Catherine. The name meant nothing to Clara, but the way the girl looked at her, like Clara was an obstacle to be removed, said plenty. What brings you to Blackridge? Clara asked, though she was starting to suspect. We've come to discuss Catherine's future, Lady Thornbury said, a future that was promised to her before you arrived. Ice flooded Clara's veins. I'm sorry? Our families had an understanding, Lord Thornbury said, an arrangement between the late Duke and myself. When the time was right, Catherine and Rowan would what? Rowan's voice cut through the hall like a blade. He'd appeared from his study, his expression thunderous. Because I don't recall making any promises to anyone. Your father did, Lady Thornbury said. On his deathbed, he asked our families to unite. My father said many things in his final days. Most of them weren't coherent. Rowan's jaw was tight. And even if he had made such a promise, it would have died with him. I am not bound by arrangements I never agreed to. But you and Catherine were childhood friends, Lady Thornbury pressed. Before Evelyn, don't. The single word was deadly quiet. Don't say her name. Catherine stepped forward, her eyes pleading. Rowan, please, just listen. I know this is awkward, but if we could talk privately. There's nothing to discuss privately, Rowan said. I'm married. Whatever understanding our fathers may have had is irrelevant. A marriage that happened very suddenly, Lord Thornbury said, his gaze shifting to Clara with barely concealed disdain. Some might say suspiciously so. Clara felt Rowan tense beside her. Before he could respond, she said, Suspicious how? Because a duke married someone below his station, or because he didn't consult the social register first? I'm merely suggesting, Lord Thornbury said carefully, that certain arrangements can be dissolved if all parties agree it's for the best. Get out. Rowan's voice was flat, final. Your Grace, please be reasonable. Get out of my house, now. The Thornburys exchanged glances. Then Lady Thornbury drew herself up with offended dignity. You're making a terrible mistake. Catherine would have been perfect for you, a proper lady from a good family who understands her duty. Unlike me? Clara said quietly. Lady Thornbury's smile was poisonous. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Clara stepped forward, and something in her expression made the older woman step back. Let me be very clear. I am the Duchess of Blackridge. Not because I trapped anyone or manipulated my way here or offered something I shouldn't have. I'm here because I married a man who needed a wife and I needed security. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't a love match. But it's legal, it's binding, and it's none of your business. Clara, Rowan started, but she wasn't finished. Whatever promises you think you're owed, whatever future you planned for your daughter, none of that matters. Rowan made his choice. I suggest you respect it. Silence fell. Catherine's eyes had filled with tears. Her mother looked furious. Lord Thornbury just looked tired. Come, Catherine, he said finally. We're not wanted here. They left in a flurry of skirts and wounded pride. The door slammed behind them. Clara stood in the sudden quiet, her heart racing. That had been stupid, reckless. Dukes didn't side with their wives over gentry families. She'd just made enemies they couldn't afford. Rowan's hand found hers. That, he said, was magnificent. Clara looked up at him, startled. I probably just started a feud. I don't care. His eyes were bright with something she couldn't name. You defended us. Our marriage. Even knowing it started as a business arrangement. It's not just business anymore. No, Rowan agreed. It's not. Mrs. Hartwell cleared her throat delicately. Shall I have the staff prepare for potential retaliation, Your Grace? The thorn berries have influence. Let them try, Rowan said. Clara's right. We owe them nothing. After the housekeeper left, Rowan turned to Clara. I should have warned you about Catherine. Our fathers did discuss it years ago, but I never agreed to anything. After Evelyn, I couldn't imagine. He stopped. It doesn't matter. You're my wife. That's the end of it. Is it? Clara asked. Because she was beautiful, Rowan. Well-bred. Everything a duchess should be. She was also someone I felt nothing for. Someone I would have married out of duty and resented for the rest of my life. His hand tightened on hers. You make me want to try, to feel. That's worth more than perfect bloodlines. Clara's throat tightened. You're getting better at words. I have good motivation. They stood there in the entrance hall, hands linked, until Rowan seemed to remember something. The ride, he said. I wanted to show you something. Are you still willing? Always. An hour later, they were riding north, beyond the estate's cultivated lands, into wilder territory. The storm clouds Clara had noticed that morning were closer now, but Rowan seemed unconcerned. Where are we going? She asked. You'll see. They rode for another 20 minutes before Rowan stopped at the crest of a hill. Below them, a valley spread out, and in the center, the ruins of what must have once been a magnificent house. What is this place? Clara asked. The original Blackridge manor, built 300 years ago. Rowan dismounted and helped her down. It burned when my great-grandfather was a boy. They built the current manor further south, but this was the heart of the estate. They walked through the ruins together. Walls stood in places open to the sky. You could still see where rooms had been, where gardens had grown. Why did you bring me here? Clara asked. Rowan was quiet for a moment, looking at the ruins. Because I've been thinking about what you said. About being alive meaning sometimes things hurt. About choosing to care even knowing you might lose it. And I realized this place burned. Everything the Blackridges had built over generations, gone in a single night. They could have given up, left, started over somewhere else. He turned to her. But they didn't. They stayed. They rebuilt. They made something new from the ashes. Clara's breath caught. Rowan, I'm not good at grand gestures. I don't know how to be the husband you deserve. But I can do this. I can stay. I can rebuild. I can try to make something new with you. He took both her hands. If you'll be patient with me. I already told you I would. I know, but I needed you to understand what you're agreeing to. I'm going to mess this up multiple times. I'm going to panic and withdraw, and Clara kissed him, cutting off the spiral of worry. When she pulled back, she said, I know. I don't care. We'll figure it out. Thunder rumbled overhead. The storm was almost on them. We should head back, Rowan said, but he made no move to release her hands. Probably. They stayed anyway, standing in the ruins while the first drops of rain began to fall. Rowan pulled her closer, sheltering her with his body, even though it was futile. They were both getting soaked. This is impractical, Clara said, laughing. Completely. But Rowan was smiling, really smiling, and Clara realized it was the first time she'd seen him look genuinely happy. The rain came harder. They ran for their horses, both laughing now, and rode back through the storm. By the time they reached the manor, they were drenched and shivering. Mrs. Hartwell took one look at them and sighed. Hot baths, both of you, immediately. But later, dried and warm, they found each other again. Rowan came to Clara's rooms, knocked, waited for permission. Can I come in? Of course. He sat beside her on the settee near the fire. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Rowan said, Tell me about your family. Really tell me. Not the polite version you gave before. So Clara did. She told him about watching her father crumble under debt, about her mother's quiet desperation, about Tom's anger at a world that would sell his sister. She told him about the guilt of leaving them, even knowing it was the only option. Rowan listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said, I'll increase their allowance. And Tom, if he wants to come here to train in estate management or learn a trade, we can arrange it. You don't have to. I want to. They're your family. That makes them mine now, too. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you. Don't thank me. It's what family does, he paused. At least it's what family should do. Mine wasn't very good at it. Tell me, Clara said. About your father, about growing up here. Rowan's expression shuddered slightly, but he didn't refuse. My father was exacting. Everything was about duty, legacy, maintaining the Blackridge name. He had plans for every aspect of my life, where I'd study, who I'd marry, how I'd run the estate. That sounds suffocating. It was. The only time I felt like I could breathe was with Evelyn. She understood what it was like. She had similar pressure from her family. We were friends first, then more. It felt like the one choice that was actually mine. His voice went rough. When she died, it felt like the universe was punishing me for daring to want something. Clara reached for his hand. That's not how the universe works, isn't it? My father died 6 months after Evelyn. I inherited everything, and suddenly I was responsible for thousands of acres and hundreds of people, and I had no idea what I was doing. So I just closed off, focused on the work, kept everyone at a distance because it was safer. Until I arrived and ruined your carefully ordered life. Rowan's lips twitched. Something like that. Do you regret it? Marrying me? He looked at her, really looked, his gray eyes serious. No, I regret how I treated you at first. I regret wasting months we could have spent actually talking. But marrying you? That might be the first thing I've done in 6 years that wasn't just about duty. It was duty. You needed an heir. I told myself that. But Clara... He lifted her hand to his lips, pressed a kiss to her knuckles. I had a dozen offers before yours. Families with better connections, larger dowries. I chose you. Why? Because when I met you, that one brief meeting before the wedding, you looked at me like I was just a man, not a duke, not a title, not a prize to be won, just a man. And I thought maybe, with you, I could remember how to be one. Clara felt her heart crack open. You're doing pretty well so far. Am I? Rowan's voice was uncertain. Because I still feel like I'm stumbling through this. Every day I wake up and think maybe today you'll realize you deserve better. Stop. Clara shifted closer until their knees touched. I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to really hear it. I don't want perfect. Perfect is boring. I want you. Complicated, damaged, works too much you. The man who runs into burning buildings for stable boys, who rides out in blizzards for his tenants, who keeps everyone at arm's length because he's terrified of losing them. That doesn't sound appealing. It's real. And real is worth more than perfect. Rowan cupped her face in his hands. How are you so sure? Because I've tried perfect. My whole life was about being the perfect daughter, obedient, quiet, never making waves. It was exhausting, and it got me nothing. She covered his hands with hers. I'd rather have messy and honest. I can definitely provide messy. Clara laughed, and Rowan kissed her. It started gentle but deepened quickly, 6 years of loneliness and fear melting into something desperate and real. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Rowan rested his forehead against hers. Stay with me tonight, he said. Not in the study or the library, in my bed. Let me hold you. Just hold me? His cheeks flushed. For now, I don't want to rush this, don't want to mess it up. You won't mess it up. I might. But I want to try to do this right. He pulled back, meeting her eyes. You deserve to be courted, wooed, not just acquired. Clara felt warmth flood through her. All right, court me then. How does one court their own wife? I have no idea. We'll figure it out together. Over the next weeks, Rowan tried. Awkwardly, endearingly, he tried. He left flowers on her pillow, wildflowers from the estate, not hothouse roses. He asked her opinion on estate decisions and actually listened to her answers. He scheduled rides together, dinners that weren't just obligation. He talked, really talked, about his day, his worries, his hopes for the estate. And slowly, gradually, Clara watched the walls come down. It wasn't smooth. There were still moments when Rowan would panic, when old fears would resurface. Once, after a particularly good day together, he didn't show up for dinner. Clara found him in his study, hands shaking. What happened? She asked. I was happy, he said, voice raw. For the whole day, I was just happy. And then I realized I was happy, and I started thinking about how it would feel to lose this, and Clara pulled him into her arms. Breathe, just breathe. I'm sorry, I'm being ridiculous. You're being human. It's allowed. She held him until the shaking stopped. Then they had dinner together in his study, talking about nothing important until the fear passed. The estate noticed the change, too. Servants whispered about how the Duke smiled now, how the Duchess had softened him. Tenants remarked on it when Rowan visited. He seemed lighter somehow, less burdened. Garrett mentioned it one morning during a meeting. "Whatever you're doing, Your Grace, keep doing it. Haven't seen you this engaged in years." Rowan glanced at Clara, who was reviewing contracts at the corner desk. "I'm trying." "It shows." But not everyone was pleased. 3 weeks after the Thornberrys' visit, rumors started circulating. Whispers that the marriage was a sham, that Clara had trapped Rowan somehow, that it wouldn't last. Mrs. Hartwell brought the news to Clara one afternoon. "I thought you should know, Your Grace. The Thornberrys have been spreading stories. Nothing actionable, but damaging nonetheless." Clara felt anger rise, hot and sharp. "What kind of stories?" "That you were with child before the marriage, that your family threatened scandal if the Duke didn't wed you, that you're—" Mrs. Hartwell hesitated. "That you're unsuitable for the position." "I am unsuitable," Clara said flatly. "I have no title, no connections, no training for this role. They're not wrong." "They're absolutely wrong," Rowan said from the doorway. He must have just returned from his morning rounds. "You're exactly what this estate needs, what I need." "Rowan, no, let me finish." He crossed to her, took her hands. "I've been thinking about this, about them and their rumors and what it means." "What does it mean?" "It means we stop hiding. Stop acting like our marriage is something to be ashamed of. We host an event, a ball, a dinner, something. We show everyone that we're united, that this isn't some temporary arrangement." Clara stared at him. "You hate social events." "I know." "You avoid them whenever possible." "I know." "So why—" "Because I'm tired of letting other people define what we are. Because you deserve to be celebrated, not whispered about." His grip tightened on her hands. "Because I want everyone to know that you're mine and I'm yours, and they can all take their opinions and—" Clara kissed him, cutting off what was probably about to be a very undiplomatic statement. When she pulled back, she was smiling. "A ball it is." Planning the event consumed the next 2 weeks. Clara threw herself into it, determined to prove she could do this. Mrs. Hartwell helped, guiding her through the intricacies of seating arrangements and menu selection. Rowan watched her work with something like awe. "You're enjoying this." "Is that so surprising?" "Yes, actually. I thought you hated this kind of thing." Clara looked up from her lists. "I hated being invisible. This is different. I'm not trying to disappear into the background. I'm making a statement." "What statement?" "That I belong here." She met his eyes. "That we belong together." The night of the ball arrived with all the chaos such events entailed. The manor blazed with light, flowers everywhere, musicians tuning in the ballroom. Clara dressed in a new gown, deep blue silk that Rowan had insisted on buying, over her protests about the expense. When she descended the stairs, Rowan was waiting at the bottom. He stared at her like she'd stolen his ability to speak. "You look—" He stopped, swallowed. "I don't have words." "Beautiful will do." "That doesn't cover it." He offered his arm. "Ready? Are you?" Rowan took a deep breath. "For you?" "Yes." The ballroom filled quickly. Every important family within 50 miles had come, some out of genuine affection, others out of curiosity or spite. Clara felt their eyes on her, weighing, judging. The Thornberrys arrived late, making an entrance. Catherine looked lovely in pink, her mother sharp-eyed and watchful. "Ignore them," Rowan murmured. "They're not worth your energy." But as the evening progressed, ignoring became harder. Clara overheard whispered conversations, saw the pitying looks some women gave her, the speculative glances men cast her way. She was standing by the refreshment table, gathering her composure, when Lady Thornberry appeared beside her. "Quite the turnout," the older woman said, "though I wonder how many came out of respect versus mere curiosity." Clara kept her expression neutral. "Does it matter? They're here." "True, though one wonders how long this charade can continue." "It's not a charade." "Isn't it?" Lady Thornberry's smile was cold. "My dear, everyone knows why you're really here. Your family needed money. The Duke needed an heir. It's a transaction, nothing more." "You're right," Clara said quietly. "It started as a transaction, but it's become something more." Has it? Because from where I stand, you're playing a role, and eventually the Duke will tire of the performance. Before Clara could respond, Rowan appeared at her side. Lady Thornberry, I believe your husband is looking for you. The older woman's eyes narrowed, but she drifted away. What did she say? Rowan asked. Nothing important. Clara forced a smile. Shall we dance? They took the floor and Clara tried to lose herself in the movement, but Lady Thornberry's words had hit their mark. Was she just playing a role, pretending to be something she wasn't? You're thinking too loud, Rowan said. Sorry. What did she really say? Clara looked up at him. That this is all a performance. That you'll tire of me eventually. Rowan's jaw tightened. And you believed her? I don't know. Should I? He stopped dancing abruptly, right there in the middle of the floor. Other couples swirled around them as Rowan cupped Clara's face in his hands, uncaring of who was watching. Listen to me, he said. I am many things, stubborn, closed off, emotionally stunted, but I am not a liar. When I say you matter to me, I mean it. When I say this is real, it's real. Rowan, everyone's staring. Let them stare. His thumbs brushed her cheeks. Let them all see. You're my wife. The only one I want. The only one I'll ever want. And if anyone has a problem with that, they can leave. Silence had fallen around them. Clara could feel dozens of eyes watching, could imagine the gossip this would spawn. She didn't care. She rose on her toes and kissed him, right there in front of everyone. Rowan made a surprised sound, then kissed her back, one hand sliding into her hair. When they finally broke apart, the ballroom erupted in whispers. But Clara also heard a smattering of applause, saw some approving smiles. Well, Rowan said, slightly breathless. That's one way to make a statement. I learned from the best. They finished the dance, and this time when people looked at them, Clara saw something different. Not pity or speculation, but acceptance. Maybe even approval. After the ball, as servants cleaned and guests departed, Clara and Rowan stood in the empty ballroom. Thank you, Clara said, for tonight, for defending us. I should have done it sooner. Rowan pulled her close. I should have made it clear from the beginning that you weren't just a convenience, that you are important. You're making up for it now. Am I doing enough? Clara looked up at him, this complicated man who was trying so hard to be better. You're doing everything right. I love you. The words tumbled out, urgent and unplanned. I know it's too soon, and I know I'm terrible at this, but I can't keep it in anymore. I love you, Clara. Completely. Terrifyingly. I love you. Clara felt tears spring to her eyes. Say it again. I love you. Again. I love you. Rowan was smiling now, that rare, genuine smile. I love you. Should I keep going? Please. So he did, murmuring it between kisses, whispering it against her skin, saying it like a prayer and a promise and a plea all at once. And Clara, who had come to this cold manor as a transaction, as a solution to her family's problems, as nothing more than a convenient bride, Clara finally felt like she'd come home. And Clara, who had come to this cold manor as a transaction, as a solution to her family's problems, as nothing more than a convenient bride, Clara finally felt like she'd come home. They stood in the empty ballroom until the last candle guttered out, wrapped in each other, neither willing to break the moment. When they finally made their way upstairs, Rowan guided her not to her wing or his, but to a door Clara had never noticed before. What's this? She asked. Open it. Inside was a suite she'd never seen, larger than either of their separate apartments, clearly meant for a married couple. The furniture was new, the fabrics fresh. A fire burned in the hearth. I had it prepared, Rowan said quietly, after you came back from your families. I thought, if we were going to try this properly, we should stop living in separate wings like polite strangers. Clara walked through the rooms, trailing her fingers over surfaces. Bedroom, sitting room, 2 dressing areas, a shared bath, everything carefully chosen, thoughtfully arranged. When did you do all this? I've been working on it for weeks. Mrs. Hartwell helped. He looked uncertain. If you don't like it, we can change things. Clara kissed him, silencing the doubt. It's perfect. That night they made love for the first time, awkward and tender and nothing like the smooth romance novels promised. Rowan was nervous, fumbling with buttons. Clara couldn't stop laughing at one point, which made him laugh too. But it was real and it was theirs, and when they finally lay tangled together afterward, Clara had never felt more complete. I was terrible at that, Rowan said against her hair. You were fine. I was not. I was human. You were human. Clara propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. Perfect is boring, remember? Rowan's hand traced patterns on her bare shoulder. I want to be good at this. At making you happy. You already are. Clarice, Rowan, listen to me. You could have kept me at a distance forever, could have maintained that cold politeness for years. But you didn't. You tried. You're still trying. That's everything. He pulled her down, kissed her slowly. I don't deserve you. Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway. They fell asleep like that, skin to skin, breath to breath, and for the first time in 6 years, Rowan slept through the night without nightmares. The next morning brought unexpected visitors. Clara was working on estate correspondence when Mrs. Hartwell appeared, looking troubled. Your Grace, there are people here to see you, from your family's estate. Clara's stomach dropped. What's wrong? I don't know, but they're asking for both you and His Grace. In the drawing room, Clara found 3 of her father's former servants, the ones who'd stayed on after the estate was sold. They looked exhausted, worried. Your Grace, the oldest one said, twisting his cap. We're sorry to bother you, but it's your brother. Tom, what about him? He's gone missing. Left 3 days ago with just a note saying he couldn't stay there anymore. Your parents are beside themselves. Rowan appeared in the doorway, clearly having been summoned. What's happened? Clara explained quickly, her mind racing. Tom was only 13, alone in the world. We'll find him, Rowan said immediately. Get the men ready. We'll organize search parties. Wait. Clara held up a hand. Where would he go? What did the note say exactly? The servant pulled a crumpled paper from his pocket. Clara recognized Tom's handwriting immediately. I can't watch them sell everything else. I'm going somewhere I can actually do something. Don't look for me. Somewhere he can do something, Clara repeated. She looked at Rowan. He's coming here. You're sure? I told him about the estate in my letters, about how you manage everything, how you work with the tenants. He was fascinated. She stood. He's trying to reach Blackridge. Rowan was already moving. The northern road is the most direct route from your family's estate. If he's on foot, he'd take the old posting path. He turned to Garrett, who'd appeared behind him. Get horses ready. We ride north in 10 minutes. I'm coming too, Clara said. Clara, he's my brother. I'm coming. Rowan looked like he wanted to argue, then just nodded. All right, but you stay with me. They rode hard, following the posting path north. It was rougher than the main road, less maintained. Rowan pushed the pace, his eyes scanning the landscape. There! Clara pointed to a small figure trudging along the path ahead. Tom turned at the sound of hooves, his face pale and frightened. Then he recognized Clara, and something in his expression crumpled. I'm sorry, he said as she dismounted and ran to him. I'm sorry, I just couldn't. I had to. Shh, it's all right. Clara pulled her brother into her arms, feeling how thin he'd gotten. You're safe now. Tom was crying, which he never did. They sold Mother's piano, the one from her grandmother, and Father just sat there and let them take it because we needed the money and I couldn't watch anymore. I couldn't just sit there being useless. You're not useless. I am. I'm 13. I can't work, can't help, can't do anything but watch everything fall apart. He pulled back, wiping his eyes roughly. I thought, your letters made Blackridge sound like a place where people actually did things. I thought maybe I could learn something, be useful. Rowan had dismounted and was listening quietly. Now he stepped forward. Tom, he said, you walked 3 days to get here? Tom straightened, trying to look braver than he felt. Yes, sir, Your Grace. That took courage and determination. Rowan studied him. We could use someone with those qualities, if you're serious about learning. Tom's eyes went wide. Really? Really? We'll send word to your parents that you're safe. Then, if you're willing to work hard, we'll find you a place here. Start with the stable master. Learn the basics. Work your way up. I'll work hard, I promise. I'll do anything. Don't promise anything, Rowan interrupted. Just show up every day and try. That's all anyone can ask. Tom looked at his sister, then back at Rowan. Thank you. Thank you. I won't let you down. You might, Rowan said. That's allowed. Everyone fails sometimes. The question is whether you get back up. They rode back to Blackridge with Tom on Garrett's horse, still looking stunned. Clara watched her brother and her husband talk about estate work, saw Tom hanging on every word. Thank you, she said quietly to Rowan when they were alone for a moment. For what? For giving him a chance. For not sending him back. Rowan shrugged. He's family. Besides, we can always use good people. He paused. And I meant what I said, about everyone failing. I need him to know it's not the end of the world when it happens. Clara squeezed his hand, understanding the real message. Rowan was still learning that lesson himself. Tom settled into Blackridge quickly, throwing himself into work with the desperate energy of someone trying to prove their worth. He was in the stables before dawn, stayed until dark, absorbed everything the stable master taught him. He's a good lad, the stable master reported after a week. Works hard, doesn't complain, asks smart questions. Clara visited Tom most days, making sure he was eating enough, not pushing too hard. I'm fine, he insisted. Better than fine. I'm actually doing something. You're 13. You should be doing more than just working. I don't want to do more. I want to do this. Tom looked at her seriously. Clara, for the first time since everything went bad, I don't feel useless. Please don't take that away. So she didn't. She just made sure he had time for lessons too, hiring a tutor to continue his education between work shifts. Spring arrived with its usual chaos of planting and planning. Clara had taken over more of the estate management, working alongside Rowan to manage the increasingly complex operations. They made a good team. Rowan's experience combined with Clara's fresh perspective produced solutions neither would have found alone. We should consolidate the northern farms, Clara said one morning, studying the maps. 3 separate managers for adjacent properties is inefficient. My father set that up that way deliberately. Checks and balances. Or 3 separate opportunities for miscommunication and wasted resources. She traced the boundaries. What if we combined them under one strong manager, someone we trust? Rowan considered. Garrett's been wanting more responsibility, and he knows those properties. So we promote him, hire a new land agent for his current duties, streamline the whole system. My father would hate this idea. Your father isn't here. Clara met his eyes. You are, and you get to decide how things work now. Something shifted in Rowan's expression. Acceptance, maybe, or relief. He'd been running the estate the way his father had for years, never questioning whether there might be better ways. All right, he said. Let's try it. The reorganization took months but proved successful. Yields improved, costs decreased, and tenant satisfaction went up. Word spread. The Duke of Blackridge was making changes, and they were working. Other estates started asking questions, wanting to know Rowan's methods. The Duchess, they whispered, had something to do with it. She worked alongside her husband like a partner, not just to ornament. The Thornberrys heard these whispers too. Catherine appeared at Blackridge one afternoon in early summer, alone this time. Clara received her in the drawing room, wary. Thank you for seeing me, Catherine said. She looked different, less polished, more uncertain. I know I'm not welcome here. What do you want, Catherine? To apologize. For my parents, for myself, for everything. Catherine twisted her hands together. I've been thinking about what you said at the ball, about the marriage being real. I didn't believe it then, but I've been watching. Everyone's been watching, and it's obvious. What's obvious? That he loves you? That you've made him happy in a way I never could have? Catherine's voice wavered. I was angry at first, jealous. I thought I deserved him because our families had an agreement. But the truth is, I didn't love him either. I loved the idea of being a duchess, of having status and security. Clara softened slightly. That's honest, at least. I came to ask if you'd consider... Catherine stopped, started again. My parents are still spreading rumors. It's petty and cruel, and I want it to stop. If I speak publicly against them, support your marriage, they'll have to stop or risk looking foolish. Why would you do that? Because it's the right thing. Because I'm tired of being their weapon. Catherine met Clara's eyes. And because I want to be the kind of person who does the right thing, Even when it costs me something. Clara studied her, looking for deception. She found only weary honesty. All right, she said, but Catherine, if this is a trick, it's not. I swear. Catherine stood. I'll send a letter to the social register, make my position clear, and I'll tell my parents they need to stop, or I'll cut ties with them. After Catherine left, Clara found Rowan in his study. You'll never guess who just visited. Catherine Thornberry? Clara blinked. How did you know? Mrs. Hartwell told me. I was about to intervene, but you seemed to have it handled. He set down his pen. What did she want? Clara explained. Rowan listened, his expression unreadable. Do you believe her? He asked. I think so. She seemed genuine. People can seem genuine and still be manipulating you. I know, but I also know what it's like to be trapped by other people's expectations. If she's really trying to break free, Clara shrugged. Maybe she deserves the chance. Rowan pulled her into his lap, something he'd started doing when they were alone. You're too kind. I'm practical. If she can stop her parents' campaign, it helps us. And if she can't, then we deal with it, together. True to her word, Catherine's letter appeared in the social register the following week. She publicly congratulated the Duke and Duchess on their marriage, spoke of Clara's positive influence on the estate, and made it clear she supported the union completely. The effect was immediate. The Thornberrys' rumors lost power. Without Catherine's wounded status to give them weight, the stories just sounded petty. Lady Thornberry tried one last attack, appearing at a social gathering Clara attended and making pointed comments about certain people who didn't know their place. Clara had had enough. You're right, she said loudly enough for nearby conversations to stop. I don't know my place. I'm still learning. But at least I'm not so insecure about my own worth that I need to tear down others to feel important. Lady Thornberry's face went red. How dare you? How dare I what? Speak honestly? Stand up for myself? Clara stepped closer. You've spent months trying to destroy my marriage because your daughter didn't get what you promised her. But here's the truth. Catherine is better off. She's finding her own path instead of being forced into yours. Maybe you should try the same. The room had gone silent. Lady Thornberry looked around, saw only disapproving faces, and fled. One of the older duchesses, a formidable woman Clara had been terrified of, approached with a slight smile. Well said, my dear. That woman needed to be put in her place years ago. She patted Clara's arm. You're doing well. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Clara felt something settle in her chest. Acceptance. Maybe even belonging. That night, Rowan found her in their sitting room, staring into the fire. I heard about the Thornberry incident, he said. Are you angry? Angry? Clara, I'm proud of you. You handled it better than I would have. I might have made things worse. You made things better. You stood up for yourself, for us. That takes courage. He sat beside her, pulling her close. I should have done it myself months ago. Should have shut down the rumors immediately. You were trying to avoid conflict. I was being a coward, letting them attack you while I hid behind politeness. He tilted her face up. I'm sorry for not protecting you better. You're protecting me now. That's what matters. They sat in comfortable silence until Rowan said, I've been thinking about something. What? The estate. It's doing well. Better than it has in years. We have stable income, good people, systems that work. He paused. We could use that success to help others. Other estates struggling like your family's was. Clara sat up, interested. How? Share our methods. Offer advice, maybe even financial support for improvements. Create a network of estates working together instead of competing. That's ambitious. It's necessary. There are dozens of families one bad harvest away from losing everything. We could help prevent that. Clara looked at her husband, seeing the man he'd become. Not the cold, distant duke she'd married, but someone who cared deeply about his responsibilities and wanted to use his position for good. I love you, she said. Rowan smiled, that genuine smile that still took her breath away. I love you too. So you think it's a good idea? I think it's brilliant. When do we start? They started immediately, reaching out to struggling estates, offering advice and support. Some accepted gratefully. Others were too proud, at least at first. But slowly, a network formed, landowners sharing information, helping each other, learning from collective experience. Tom thrived in this environment, soaking up knowledge from every available source. By summer's end, the stable master was talking about promoting him. "He's got a gift," the man told Clara. "Real understanding of the animals, and the workers respect him even though he's young." Clara's parents visited in August, ostensibly to see Tom, but really to see what had become of their daughter. Clara barely recognized them. Her father looked older, her mother more worn. "You look well," her mother said, the words loaded with surprise. "I am well." "And the Duke? He treats you properly?" Clara glanced at Rowan, who was showing her father the northern fields. "He treats me like a partner, like an equal." "I'm glad." Her mother's voice was soft. "I worried we'd sent you to a terrible fate. You sent me to survival. What I found here, that was my own doing." Her parents stayed 3 days. Clara watched them interact with Rowan, saw their surprise at how natural they were together. This wasn't the cold marriage they'd imagined. It was real, messy, and genuine. "You've done well for yourself," her father said before they left. "Better than I dared hope." "I had good motivation," Clara said. "I didn't want to spend my life being miserable." After they left, Tom sought Clara out. "They're different than I remembered," he said. "We're all different. Circumstances change people." "Are you different?" Clara considered. "Yes, I'm stronger, more certain of myself." "Because of him?" Tom nodded toward where Rowan was working with Garrett. "Because of me. He helped, but the choice to change was mine." Tom nodded slowly. "I'm glad you made it." "Me too." Autumn brought the harvest, larger than projected, more successful than hoped. The new systems worked. The reorganization paid off. Blackridge was thriving, and so was Clara. She stood in the library one evening, looking at the book she'd cataloged over months, the space she'd claimed as her own. This was hers now, truly hers. Not because she'd been given it, but because she'd made it so. Rowan found her there. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How far we've come. How different everything is from that first terrible week." He wrapped his arms around her from behind. "Do you ever regret it? Marrying me?" "Never. Do you?" "Not once." He turned her to face him. "Clara, I need to tell you something." The serious tone made her nervous. "What?" "I went to the lake last week, the first time since Evelyn died." Clara's breath caught. "Rowan, let me finish. I went there, and for the first time I could remember the good parts, before the drowning. I could think about her without the guilt crushing me." His eyes were bright. "I realized she'd hate what I became, the way I locked myself away. She'd be furious with me for wasting 6 years." "You weren't wasting them. You were surviving. Maybe. But survival isn't living. You taught me that. You forced me to choose living." He cupped her face. "I'll always love her memory. But I love you more. Present tense. Active. Real." Tears streamed down Clara's face. "You're getting very good with words." "I have good motivation." He wiped her tears away gently. "I want to fill this house with life again, with noise and chaos and—" He stopped, suddenly uncertain. "I'm saying this badly. You're saying you want a family. I'm saying I want our family. Children who fill these empty rooms, who make the manor feel like a home instead of a museum." Clara kissed him, tasting salt from both their tears. "Yes. Yes. Yes. To all of it." That winter, Clara discovered she was pregnant. Rowan's reaction was pure terror, followed by fierce joy. "What if something goes wrong?" he asked immediately. "What if everything goes right?" "Clara, Rowan, we can't live our lives afraid of the worst happening. We just have to trust that we'll handle it together." He pulled her close, his hand already protective over her still flat stomach. "I'm going to be terrible at this. I'm going to worry constantly and probably drive you insane." "Probably," Clara agreed. "But you'll also be wonderful. I know it." The pregnancy was difficult at times. Clara was sick for months, then exhausted. Rowan hovered constantly, driving her to distraction with his concern. "I'm pregnant, not dying," she finally snapped one day. "I know, but—" "No buts. I'm fine. The baby's fine. Go manage the estate and stop treating me like I'm made of glass." Rowan looked wounded, but he backed off. Slightly. Tom, now 14 and working as an assistant land agent, took to teasing Rowan about his hovering. "You know she survived for 22 years without you watching her every move," he said. "That was before she was carrying my child. The baby is inside her, protected, by her entire body. I think it's safe from external threats." Rowan glared at him, but there was affection in it. Tom had become the younger brother he'd never had, the fresh perspective he didn't know he needed. Spring arrived with its usual chaos, except this time Clara was too pregnant to help with planning. She tried anyway, until Rowan physically removed papers from her hands. "You're supposed to be resting. I'm supposed to be useful. You're growing a human. That's useful." Clara glared at him, but she was too tired to really fight. The last month of pregnancy was exhausting in ways she hadn't anticipated. The baby came in late April during a thunderstorm that reminded Clara of her first days at Blackridge. The labor was long and difficult. Rowan stayed with her the entire time, ignoring the midwife's suggestions that he wait elsewhere. "I'm not leaving," he said flatly. When their daughter finally arrived, small and angry and perfect, Rowan cried. Actually cried, holding this tiny person they'd made together. "She's perfect," he whispered. "She's wrinkled and red," Clara said, exhausted but laughing. "She's perfect," he insisted. They named her Eleanor after Rowan's grandmother. She had Rowan's dark hair and Clara's stubborn chin. Mrs. Hartwell cried when she met her. "The manor has been waiting for this, for life." Tom visited constantly, enchanted by his niece. "She's so small. Are they supposed to be this small?" "Yes," Clara said, amused. "How does she survive being this small?" Carefully. Rowan was a nervous wreck as a father, constantly checking that Eleanor was breathing, that she was warm enough, that nothing was wrong. "She's fine," Clara said for the 100th time. "But what if—" "Rowan, look at me." She waited until he met her eyes. "We're going to make mistakes. We're going to worry. We're going to be exhausted and confused, and sometimes we'll have no idea what we're doing, but we'll figure it out, together." He nodded, taking a shaky breath. Together. Summer passed in a blur of sleepless nights and tiny milestones. Eleanor's first smile, her first laugh, the way she'd grasp Rowan's finger and refuse to let go. The estate thrived under their continued management. The network they'd built with other landowners grew stronger. Blackridge became known not just for its success, but for its generosity in helping others succeed too. One evening, when Eleanor was 6 months old and finally sleeping through the night, Clara and Rowan stood in what had once been a cold, formal drawing room and was now filled with toys and signs of life. "Do you remember what you said that first night?" Clara asked. "About this being a transaction?" Rowan winced. "I was an idiot." "You were scared." "I was an idiot who happened to be scared." He pulled her close. "I can't imagine what my life would be like if you hadn't pushed back. If you'd just accepted the distance I tried to keep." "I can." "You'd be miserable and alone, managing a perfect estate with no one to share it with." "And you?" "I'd be a ghost haunting your corridors, going slowly insane from isolation." They stood in silence, holding each other, Eleanor sleeping peacefully in the nursery upstairs. "We should probably get another dog," Rowan said suddenly. Clara laughed. "Why?" "Because this place is becoming a home, and homes should have dogs. And maybe another child or two. And definitely more life and chaos and everything I spent 6 years avoiding." "You're sure you're ready for that?" Rowan looked down at her, his gray eyes warm. "With you? I'm ready for anything." Years later, when Clara would tell their children the story of how their parents fell in love, she'd start not with the wedding or even the first meeting, but with a moment in a burned stable when their father first admitted he was afraid. "Your father," she'd say, "was the bravest coward I ever met. Brave enough to finally admit he was scared, smart enough to accept help, stubborn enough to change." And Rowan, listening from the doorway, would smile and think about how lucky he was, how close he'd come to missing all of this. The chaos, the love, the messy, beautiful life they'd built together. Eleanor would grow up strong and certain, raised by parents who taught her that strength meant vulnerability and courage meant admitting when you were wrong. Tom would eventually take over as land agent, running Blackridge with the same care Rowan had, the same innovation Clara had brought. The manor itself changed. Rooms that had been closed for years opened. Laughter echoed in hallways that had known only silence. Gardens bloomed where there had been only carefully maintained emptiness. And at the center of it all, two people who'd started as strangers, become partners, and ended as something neither had the words for. Something deeper than love, more resilient than romance. On their 10th anniversary, Clara found Rowan at the lake, the one where Evelyn had drowned, where he'd avoided for so many years. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "Saying goodbye. Properly." He gestured to the water. "I used to come here and feel guilty, like I'd betrayed her by moving on, by being happy, but I think I finally understand. She'd want this for me, want me to be happy." Clara took his hand. She would. "I wish I'd figured that out sooner. Wish I hadn't wasted so much time being afraid. You weren't ready sooner, and besides," Clara smiled up at him, "if you'd been ready, you would have married someone else. Someone suitable and perfect. And then where would I be? Married to someone who appreciated you from the start. Boring. I prefer my complicated, emotionally damaged Duke. Thank you." Rowan laughed, the sound echoing across the water. "Your complicated, emotionally damaged Duke loves you desperately." "I know. I love you too." They walked back to the manor hand in hand toward the lights blazing in every window, toward the sounds of their children playing, toward the life they'd built from ashes and fear and stubborn determination. Clara had come to Blackridge as a transaction, a necessity, a means to an end. She'd stayed because she was too stubborn to give up, too determined to accept half a life. And she'd found, not the fairy tale ending promised in stories, but something better, something real, a home, a partner, a love that had been earned, not given, built, not found. And as Rowan pulled her into his arms in the entrance hall where they'd first arrived all those years ago, as their children ran past laughing and chaos reigned around them, Clara thought about how wrong Lady Thornberry had been. This wasn't a performance. It wasn't a charade. This was everything.